Yeah. Well, my dad was nice enough to join us tonight. We've had a busy day, but it's nice to be with you guys tonight.
Nice.
You need a break.
So I was going to say, if anybody has any questions, he lived in Bristol Bay for a while in Naknek, or he lived in Kodiak also.
Mm-hmm.
If you have any
what
questions,
years did you live in Naknek?
I'm sorry?
What years did you live in Naknek?
Not that long, actually. It seemed like it was a long time, but started off there, and then
what year was that?
41, and then right after the war started, well, a year after the World War started, my dad joined the Navy, and my mom had two of her great aunts, or her aunts that lived in California, and my dad was stationed there, so we went down there, her and I, to stay with one of her aunts for the duration. And then after the war, my dad was part of the occupying forces in Japan, so we came back home. And so about 1946 to 1952 in Naknek, Peterson Point, actually. Then we moved to Kodiak. Kodiak was my dad's home.
So what did your dad do in Naknek when he was there?
He fished, and he was a winterman for Bristol Bay Packers.
Was that Alaska? Was that Alaska Packers at that time?
No, Alaska Packers was across the river. They were in South Naknek, and we were in North Naknek side, right where the base started from the river. There, yeah. It's about the biggest cannery there at that time. There's not much left of it now.
What's your favorite story from living there?
From what?
What's your favorite story from living there?
Oh, mug up.
What's mug up?
You know what mug up is, eh? Yeah, everybody up there knows what mug up is. That's the coffee breaks. You have one in the morning, and then one in the afternoon, and then one at about 9 o'clock at night, and you go sit and have a whole bunch of goodies.
What did you have?
Oh, depending on what the bakery had out. So it was especially at night when you're sitting there, and we had our own table and a big picture window, and Dennis and I, and we just drink hot chocolate, eat all kinds of cookies and stuff, and just watch the boats out there in the bay, with their Swede lamps on and stuff.
What's a Swede lamp?
It's actually a Swede stove, I'm sorry. They use them for cooking warming up, cooking their dinners.
Was that on the sailboats or on the other boats?
Sailboats.
They still had they only had sailboats then?
Yeah.
Jessica made some pictures with sailboats on them, those bay boats.
Yeah.
Yeah, she did really good on that.
They're really pretty.
Oh.
Jessica, do you have one out that you can show?
Yeah, I'm going to bring it back over here. Let's see if you guys can see it.
Oh, nice.
You got to say something because my screen keeps switching back to whoever's speaking.
Oh, here we are. This is it.
Oh.
So you can see what it is.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
It's a little gill netter.
Yeah.
So they say that the picture's from 1935 and that this boat that I based it off of was still in the water until 1950 in Naknek there.
What they call those?
What?
I
Those
forgot.
boats.
Double ender. Yeah.
Say it again.
A few years ago, they started a museum up there, and one of my uncles, and he helped restore one of those boats. It looks really nice.
They brought them up from the Columbia River, Washington.
That's where they were built.
Oh, they were built there.
Yeah, and that's where they're used.
That's really nice.
Why did they only allow sailboats?
It's strange you should ask, because just yesterday I watched a program about that.
Really?
And the power to be, which were the cannery owners, it was like working for a miner. You know,
Yeah.
you sold your fish to them, and you bought your food and everything from them, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, and they were able to control the boats, the sailboat, because they owned them.
You were an indentured servant, essentially.
Yeah, actually, yeah.
Like
And-
that song for the 16 tons, and what do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. St. Peter don't call me 'cause I can't go. Sold my soul to the company store. Right?
How do you remember?
a native guy,
Yeah,
a
keep going.
a native guy from Dillingham. When there was there'd been for about 10 years or so, they were talking about power boats, because they were already using power boats everywhere else, down in Washington and Oregon and all those places. And one of the Nates from Dillingham bought himself a power boat and brought it up, and that was the beginning of the end for sale.
You've told me before how everybody had their own area. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Their own area?
Yeah, the cannery, like depending on your nationality.
Well, not so much their own area, no, but when the outsiders, and they were generally Norwegian or Italian and some Greek, they got the best boats. The locals kind of got what was left. And when they first brought up power boats, they were built by Bryant in Washington. Really nice looking boats. And they didn't get that many of them at first, but they all went to the Norwegian fishermen. And that kind of caused some problems. If you're a local at that time, you know, I guess you could say it was racist. You know.
What about in the mess hall?
You know, I was thinking about that the other day. They had it was big. The mess hall was really big, and they had these long tables with all the condiments on them, and the condiments on the table depended upon whose table it was. Scandinavian fishermen had different condiments than the Italian had other stuff on their table, and the Greeks had other stuff on their table. But you know, in all my thoughts about this, I can't remember a table for the Nates. Dennis and I had our table, but
Yeah.
Spoiled little boys.
yeah.
Did the condiments, were they on risers above the table or just flat
No,
on the table?
on the table.
Okay. Jessica and I saw a picture the other day where the condiments are up on a table, like a shelf above the table. I was just wondering.
I'm only talking about our cannery. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. I'll look for that picture and see if I can find it.
Yeah, it was interesting, huh?
Yeah. Definitely looked like a cannery though.
My big wish was to be able to go up and buy an abandoned cannery and make it livable. Southeastern or someplace, you know.
What about healthcare? There's lots of accidents there, weren't there?
I don't know that there were lots that were. Well, they had each cannery had a doctor. The doctor we had at our cannery was always smelled like booze. But when my mom had her accident, he proved his worth, I'll tell you.
What was her accident? I don't remember that.
Well, she was operating the laundry at that time, and they had a big drum washer, and the door on it slid up like that. And then she'd load laundry in or bring it back out. Well, that door had a brass lip on thing on the bottom, so that when it came down, it went over the rest. And it came. I can't remember if she was putting stuff in or taking it out, but that door came down on her, almost took her hand off.
Oh, jeez.
And I was outside, and she came running out, and then she collapsed. And I went. We weren't too far from the doctor's office and from our house. So I went running over there, screaming and everything, and somebody came out and asked me what was wrong, and I told him, and he went and got the doctor, and it was like that. It was really serious. But
how old were you?
At that time, probably about about 7 or 8.
Oh, that's scary.
Yeah.
What did you do in the winter while you were there?
Well, in the winter, I stayed with my grandmother during the week, and then my dad come over on Friday afternoon and take me home bring me back on Sunday afternoon.
Why did you stay with your grandmother during the week?
To go to school. Oh, gosh, I went home.
No, during the week you stayed with your grandmother so you could go to school?
Go to school, yeah.
And she lived in Naknek?
My grandmother?
Yeah. And did your mom have her own dog sled?
She had my dog sled.
She had your dog sled?
Yeah.
Oh.
My grandfather had made me one. And when we came back from after the war, when we came back home, he had died at the same time that FDR did, of the same thing, as a matter of fact.
What did he die from?
Brain hemorrhage.
Oh.
And in the time that we were gone, he had built me a sled. And that's what we used when we got back. We had my grandmother had got rid of all her dogs except for one, and that's the dog that we had with the sled.
Wow.
She didn't drive her car, did she?
No, never did.
Were there cars there?
Huh?
Were there cars there?
the canneries had trucks and stuff, and there were some. They had just completed a road between King Salmon and Naknek. And it wasn't a lot. No, there was a few trucks, and that was about it. That fuel truck and stuff.
How did people get from place to place?
Well, sleds and skis and airplane. There are a lot of airplanes there. In the winter, especially, and then in the summer, of course, you had boats.
Did you guys
But in town, a lot of people just walked everywhere, right?
You just walked it a lot of times?
Not a whole lot. Walking on tundra is pretty difficult and very tiring. You know, it's when you look at tundra from a distance, it looks really nice and flat and everything. But when you start walking on it, it's a whole different story. Yeah. Kids, we'd walk on it all, but we didn't know any better.
Now, they had roads in Naknek, didn't they?
One road between the village and King Salmon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was it. And the only reason why they had that road was because of the army.
Oh. How far was it between Naknek and King Salmon?
If I remember correctly, it was 15 miles.
Oh, that's quite a ways.
Yeah, it was. There's a road now too between Naknek and Peterson Point, where we lived.
And how far was Peterson Point from Naknek itself?
About 5 miles, I think it was.
Oh, that's quite a ways.
Yeah. We'd walk the beach in the summers.
Yeah.
Speaking of travel, Mom, I recall some crazy story about your mom in a rowboat going somewhere far.
What's that?
Ingrid's mom took a rowboat somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember.
Bobby Joe filled out her drift net permit after her death. And she wrote the story about her and Figley Nikita taking a gray smoke skiff, an 18-footer with a little tent part in the front. And they took that skiff with just one outboard motor up to Igigik to go fishing because they had closed the fishery that year. And so they were going to be skunked for being able to fish, no buyer, because the river was closed. So like a pair of nitwits, both of whom old ladies, Figley only has one eye, Mom was the only one who could see to drive the thing reliably. And so they got me set up at Figley's house with Figley's food stamps. And they told us very sternly that we were not going to go down to the cannery for food at all. I was to go buy things from the store and cook for my brother and sister. So Mom and Figley get their gear all piled up and they take off. And I'm standing there on the bluff looking. And I'm like, will I ever see them again? Then I went back to town and got to somebody's house that had a shortwave radio. And I said, could you tell my Uncle Walter that his sister is gone to Igigiq from here, Pilot Point, in a skiff? They said, sure. And he rolled out of wherever he was and got his gill knitter and took out after him to meet him before they, because it was fine weather when they left, but it takes hours and hours in a skiff. And so the weather closed in and it was a huge storm with hardly any visibility by the time they got close to Igigiq. But Walter got them, and then they eventually got a message back to me. Yeah, they're both fine. They made it.
How old were you?
I think that must have been when I was 16.
Oh, goodness. Young.
That's a wide open trip all the way up that coast there.
Tell me, I've heard about it, but I've never done it. And yeah, Mom, bit crazy.
Yeah.
Well, they had a need to go fishing.
I did it in a 24-footer from Sandpoint to Naknek.
Just found it on the map. Sorry.
That was a miserable trip. We should never have done it, but to go there in an open skiff, that was not too smart.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, everything you live through is always a learning experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
So true.
Oh, I know. And it was quite a thing. Like I was 15, I think. Yeah, maybe 16. But anyhow, all the young boys who were also left in town always wanted to come to my house to visit with me in the evening. And so Sonny Gretchen and his little partner in crime, I don't remember who it was, they wanted to come into Figley's house. And I said, no. They go, why not? We'll have a good time. I go, no, go home. And I knew what he had on his mind. But jeez, people. That and Figley had a full dog team. And so my job was every 2 days to feed the dogs. So I went and got 2 5-gallon buckets of slops from the cannery where one of the Shanigan girls was cooking. I think it was, I can't remember. It might've been Evelyn. And so she would, give me the stuff and I would pack that. Have you ever carried 5 gallons full of anything on your shoulders?
No.
I was just a little bit taller than the bottom of the bucket. Any tripping and I'm having a problem. So, but I packed that thing up the Pilot Point Hill. And she goes, don't get close to them. Just feed them. Make sure they have water. I go, okay. She goes, and don't explode my stove. I go, okay.
Those were the rules, huh? Don't get close to the dogs and don't explode the stove.
She goes, yeah, you have to clean it out. You know how? I go, yeah, I do. Could you clean it right away here and show me how? And it was an oil stove. It was the kind that was converted from being a wood stove.
Sure.
And so it had a slab cast iron top. And then it had a little feed thing. But what it would do is that oil would gum up. It would cause so much soot in there. Every week or so, you had to scrape that out and, push it out the back and then dump it outside. So the stove was in good shape when she came back, all shiny. I polished it every little while with a pumice stone that came from the beach. Because we were so close to Aniakchak, we still had pumice all over the place.
Yep. Did you happen to know a bush pilot by the name of Stan Schmiel?
Nope. Didn't know him at all. Johnny Ball, he was courting me then too. I don't know. I must have been awfully attractive, but I let him down gently saying, that's okay. I don't think so. And he married one of the Gretchen girls.
Oh.
And he lived there for 30, till his death, 30 years or 40 years, something like that, till they moved to Anchorage, I think.
Did you know any of the Irons?
Jeremy and all that.
Excuse me?
I knew their names. I knew Jeremy Irons.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because he was friends with Mom and Dad. I didn't know I was pretty young. Didn't know too many.
They moved up to Naknek from Ugashic.
Yeah. Yeah. I had heard about them because they were in Ugashic. The people would talk about who's living in Ugashic. Not that I got there. I mean, I was just a kid, during those years, and they never let us go anywhere. So they would take us from California or Oregon or where we were coming from. Mom and Dad would quit their jobs and go fishing in Alaska. And so they would take us from civilization and warm weather and dump us off in Pilot Point, where we were commercial fishing slaves. You laugh. See, I was cute back then.
You're still cute.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God. Pilot Point. And when I got to be 18 years old, I said, I am done. I'm not doing that anymore.
Is that when you moved to Washington?
Yeah. I think now it must have been the year I was 16, because I remember I just got my driver's permit in California. And so we left the Bay Area near San Jose, and we drove north in Mom's very new Buick Skylark. And I was driving with a learner's permit, right? And so Mom would drive, then I would drive, Mom would drive. And so I would drive 4 to 6 hour stretches. Jeez. And we drove nearly 24 hours a day. We would take brief rests. And I swear, Mom and her idea of a good time.
What's in that bottle?
Dad.
Just some water.
If I start coughing, will somebody give me a bottle?
Of water, yes.
Well, I have asthma, so I run out of steam halfway through my stories nowadays. It's kind of the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a fun year, really. Yeah. And then we went back to stopped after fishing season. Mom had made enough so that we at least had a few $1,000s and enough for to get a plane ride back to Anchorage, grabbed the Buick and drove to Washington. Mom wanted to move us to California again. And I said, I'm not going. You go ahead. I said, I'm 16. I'll just go live with my friends in Seattle. We were there visiting Walter and his wife and children in Kent, Washington. And I said, I like this area. Why don't you find a job here? And I said, otherwise, just pull over and I'll get out. She said, stay in the car. And she found a job with Boeing. We got a really nice house and it was great. Mom, I swear she was going to be the death of all of us.
So what year did you guys move to Kodiak? Back to Kodiak or whatever, I guess.
53, I think it was.
1953. What grade were you in?
Eighth. Let's see, is there 5?
Hard questions.
I think it was the 8th.
Is that junior high? Was that junior high or high school, or what do they call it?
I don't know that they called it anything,
Oh.
except I think you went from grade school to high school in those days. Let's see. I'm trying to think of. Let's see. 41, 5. Started school in 1946.
In Naknek.
Yeah. So 8th grade would have been 54, right?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know.
So I must have been a junior when we moved to Kodiak.
In high school? You weren't in high school yet.
No, excuse me. 7th grade when we moved to
okay.
Kodiak.
And so why did you guys move back?
I think because my dad, I mean, that's where he was from. And I think that was why. And, people were moving around that time too. She lived in Seattle, and, my grandmother, not too long after that, moved to Anchorage, and, aunts get married and uncles get married, and that was the biggest part of the family, and they just ended up scattered all over the place. So, and when we got to Kodiak, it was just, there were so many relatives there that, you just became part of the community really fast. So it wasn't too bad. I mean, there was, there's something about Bristol Bay. I just, everybody I've ever talked to who Bristol Bay, regardless of when you go, where you go, Bristol Bay, I lived in Kodiak a lot longer than I lived in Bristol Bay. But Bristol Bay is the one that put its imprint on me.
Do you think that's because you were there when you were young? You guys seem to have a pretty good life there.
Yeah, I don't know. I know when I got to Bristol Bay or Kodiak and making friends, and they used to get mad at me because the bay, but I couldn't help it. That's the way it was. The Bristol Bay is a very unusual place.
That's good.
Huh?
Oh, I was just thinking. It sounds like it did. It's good. Good.
Yeah, I've been down the chain. I've been up the other side of the chain. I've been up to the interior of Alaska. The part of Alaska I've never been is southeastern. But you meet people like from Unalaska or someplace like that. Like my family actually on my mother's side is from that too, and we have some of our relatives are in the Pueblos. But you meet somebody from one of those places that seems kind of strange, And, they talk about it, and they, how much they like being there, growing up there and stuff. And then when you have an opportunity to see those places, you understand what they're talking about, But until you have that opportunity, it seems like it may not be that it's maybe a strange connection.
Yeah.
So what brought your dad to Bristol Bay? Because your mom was already there.
Well, when he left Chemawa, he worked his way back up and to Kodiak, and his younger sister had married a guy by the name of Eddie Bent, and he started fishing with him, his brother-in-law, and they fished Kodiak and Chignik. But Bristol Bay is, as far as a fisherman, Bristol Bay has always been, the place.
Mm-hmm.
And so they moved to the South Naknek, and he went with them and fished with them up there. And I don't know the circumstances of his meeting my mother, but I would guess that it would have been at a dance or something like that,
But when he left Chemawa, he went back to Kodiak, right? He worked his way back to Kodiak.
Yeah.
What year was that?
Yeah. How did he leave Chemawa? Like, what's
away.
that story about? What is that story? I mean, that's far away. Working your way back to Kodiak from Chemawa, that's a story.
His parents died in the flu epidemic in 1918, and he was 7 years old, and the government sent him to Chemawa, to the Indian school down by Salem, Oregon. And he stayed there for 10 years and got homesick. His younger sister, the superintendent of the cannery in Carluck, they took her in, and they spent their winters in Seattle. And she mentioned to him that she'd like to be able to see her brother, so they drove her down there. And after that, my dad got really homesick and just took off.
And walked.
So he just ran away and made his way north?
Yep.
Yeah. He said he picked apples and hops and all that stuff. And then when he got up to, at some point he worked for the railroad. And I don't know, that was been in 1925. No, 1928. So the Depression was on at that time. It had to be a pretty tough thing to do, but
how did he had to have taken a boat? Gotten on a boat?
Yeah, he worked. I think he worked on a cannery boat from Seattle up to Seward, if I remember right, and then he worked on the Alaska Railroad. And I don't know at which point he actually made it to Kodiak. You know, that just dawned on me. You know, he's sent to Chimama, didn't speak any English. He was by himself, you know. Uh, and then when he left there, he was 17 years old and by himself, you know, working his way back to Kodiak. He had some adventures, I would guess.
I guess.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
So then he went to work in a cannery for a while. He must have worked in a cannery, right?
Carl Grun's dad was a winterman at Hungry's, Pearson Point, and he retired. So my dad put in for a job and got it. And we moved into the house that they had lived in. And Carl they had these big puzzles. And they were like war planes and all that stuff. And he had glued them onto plywood backing and had hanging on the wall in his bedroom. And they were still there when we moved there.
What year did you move into the cannery housing?
I'm guessing 40, had to be 46, something like that. Because my dad had another year in the Navy after the war ended in Japan.
So where did you live before the war started?
We lived in, let me think, got to understand, I was just born.
I know. You were little.
Yeah.
Did you live in a house though, or with your grandparents, or do you remember?
No, I don't remember.
Okay.
No. No. I'm surprised I remember that, but all the things I remember about living in California, you know, that was at that young age.
Yeah, that was a big change going from Naknek to California, I bet.
Yeah.
What did you like about California then?
Apricots.
Apricots.
And lizards.
Lizards.
Oh, how cool.
Things you don't get in Naknek.
Huh?
Things you don't get in Naknek.
Not too many lizards in Naknek.
Need a pillow.
Where did you live in California?
Excuse me?
Where did you live in California?
San Leandro.
Oh.
There's a set of twin teenager young ladies that lived across the street. And they used to be, sounds strange now, they used to babysit me. And in their yard, they had a huge apricot tree.
Mm.
And when those apricots were ripe, they climbed the tree and just throw them down to me, and I just gorged myself on them. Eating a monkey, I guess.
And you guys lived with Grandma's sister?
Auntie Agnes Giselle, yeah.
And they were down there because why? Why were they there?
Well, that's where Eddie was from, her husband.
And he was Portuguese?
Yeah.
And she met him at the cannery? Or was he fishing up there?
You know, I think he came up there to work. There's a lot of transit people in those days working the seasons up there, you know, doing different things. You know, Ellie, her husband, Auntie Emma, her husband, and Auntie Agnes, they were all, Florence, they were all married.
Oh, Grandma's sisters, yeah.
No.
Oh.
Her daughters.
Well, my grandma's sisters.
Yeah.
Your
My mom and Teacher Hannah are the only ones that married local dates.
natives. Kathy, have you ever lived in Alaska? I can't remember.
No, that's one of those things you kind of hear about Hognack and everything your entire life, and you always think of it as home, but I've never been there because it's kind of a strange feeling.
Have you made family connections up there?
Yeah. There's I have a lot of. It's a big family, and so I know my cousins and everything up there, and pretty. I think all the adults who are adults, my uncles, everybody's passed. Yeah. So, but yeah, my cousins and stuff, we keep in contact, and they come down here. Physically, I can't go up there. It's too bad. Right now, I have the money and the time, but I physically can't do it. It's like,
I think your family's from a Fognac, right?
Yeah. Yes. Great grandpa ran the store, and let's see, great uncle Bob, he had the boat, the mail boat. I know that. I've picked up a lot of things here and there. So,
Do you belong to one of the corporations?
yeah, Kodiak, of course, and Fog Native, and then Native of Fognac's my village.
Oh.
So yeah.
Good. That's good.
Yeah, and so I do the cognac. I try to be involved with some stuff down here in Seattle on the shareholder committees and some of that stuff. And
it's a good thing.
It is. My mom never got to know anything that always really hurt her. And, my grandparents at that time didn't talk about it. It wasn't talked about. But this is a good time. I'm really glad the young kids are able to. There's so much for them now, that there hasn't been before.
I really think it's a good thing that they're having these camps and everything, and people are getting involved in the culture. When I was in high school, one of the big things for the young ladies was after school was out to make a trip to Seattle. And there was a lot said that when they left Kodiak, they never mentioned that they were Native.
Yeah, it wasn't talked about.
Yeah. So, and that's the way it was. Places like Seattle and even Anchorage been a kind of tough in racism for quite some time. When people came down to work in a cannery, but at another one right by the village there, we had Chinese. It depended on who you had working at a cannery, depended upon the contractor. So the contractor was responsible for filling the workers and providing for them. Well, Red Salmon Cannery, which was close to the village, they had Eskimos come down from like Kotzebue and Nome and Point Barrow places. And when things were slow, they'd all walk down to the village and be walking around, and because we had ice cream there and stuff like that. And we were so afraid of those people.
Right. It just
we were as guilty of racism as the white people were. You know.
Yeah.
It's a strange thing.
Yeah.
I feel bad about that now too. I think about that every once in a while. It bothers me that even as a boy, I don't know.
Yeah, when I was a teenager, I was going out with let's say late teens, going out and living with somebody who was actually Okanagan native from over here. And my grandma was so mad. She did not want me to be going out with it. If I was going to go out with an Indian, it had to be an island Indian. It couldn't be, somebody from outside, another one. She was, I looked at her, I'm going, what? That doesn't make sense. Yeah, that surprised me.
Is it your auntie who was a basket weaver?
Yeah, Aunt Eunice, my great aunt. Yeah.
Eunice Nez.
Yeah. Yeah, that was my great aunt.
Yeah, her great aunt.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, she was quite a lady.
She was, and Uncle Henry was he was really nice. I just remember him being just a really sweet guy and quiet.
They were great people. Wow. I'm trying to remember who else she was related to.
So there's a lot.
Yeah.
My uncles are like, there's Hermwald and Eddie and Dinky and Carl. Those are my uncles, but my grandpa's brothers, there's 14 or 10 of them. There's like uncles. Oh, I can't remember all of them. Aunt Eunice is the one I remember the most, and Auntie Enola.
What family is that?
Von Sheely's.
The Von Sheelys.
Oh, Von Sheely. Oh, yeah.
My grandpa, I guess, I just found out the other boat's name. I knew about the Kingfisher, but he also owned the Coralie. So, he was up 6 months out of the year. He was there and down here the other 6 months.
When I was crab fishing out in Alaska, the guy I was crab fishing with didn't allow any beer on the boat. So I used to go to visit Herman. He was crab fishing out there too. So we could drink some beer.
He would do that. That was Grandpa. I'm surprised. I thought he wouldn't allow drinking on the boat, but Grandpa was a drinker. What can you say? Up until later life, late in life, he did stop drinking. Yeah.
Cutting it.
Can't hear you.
Some internet.
Christine, I see Christine joined us at some point. How are you?
Huh?
Christine Redmond. That's
I'm
Christine.
well. How are you all?
Her name is Christine
Redmond.
Redmond? Yeah, she's from her family. We're related to her through Agrafina from Afognak.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Agrafina. Okay.
Where is she? This is my dad, Tim Metrokin.
It's nice to meet you, Tim, and hear your story.
Agrafina's children. Wow. That they're going to have to come out with another updated issue. The family just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
It does.
Yeah.
For sure. I think that's how we're related to you guys as well, is but I think above Agrafena or something, we're part of the Fedor Kalmakoffs. And I know that somebody has said that Fedor Kalmakoff goes into that Agrafena children, you know, that he's like her something or another, granddad or something, you know.
I think everybody with a Russian surname is in that book.
Yeah, I think I've just been kind of reading that book about our family, and somewhere in there I saw Agrafena that were related into the yeah. And it's like I want to get that book, Agrafena's daughter, though.
Yeah, my great grandmother was from Naknek, but that family, her family, had moved to Naknek from a Fognak.
Okay.
And I've been curious for some time now. If that's the case, we have to be related from somebody in a Fognak.
Yeah, Agrafena. We go back that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Agrafena was born in, I think, 1740. Is that right?
I think
I
so.
think so.
Somewhere.
Yeah, she was 4 when the massacre happened.
Oh. What family are you from?
Askolikovs.
Skolkoff? Oh, it's Skolkoff. Naknek. Yeah. Oh.
Askolikov with a little splash of mystery here and there.
I think all do.
We have spice.
You know, did you know any of the Jakinskis?
That's my family.
Huh?
That's my family.
I went to high school with Duffy.
Oh, did you?
And I didn't know that he was related to me until I was well out of high school. And we had an apartment in our house in Kodiak that we rented out. And I'll be darned if we didn't rent that apartment out to his brother and I didn't know it.
Huh.
Isn't that sad?
Oh. So my great grandmother was Mary Askolikov, and she married Walter Jakinski. But my grandmother was the second to the last child, and she had a different father. And so when Mary Askolikov passed, the family sent my grandmother to the Jesse Lee Children's Home in Seward. And so when people ask, I say Askolikov because it's that line. But my grandmother's siblings were the Jakinskis, Walter and Ed and Margaret and Cora.
Yeah, that's you know, I have run into family just about any place I've ever been. You know, it's amazing.
It's a very small, big world.
I was in the Navy, right? And we were in Hong Kong. And we had to anchor out. And one of the signalmen came down to where I worked and said, "You're Metrokin." I said, "Yes." He said, "I've got a signal coming over for you." So said, "Come on up to the signal bridge." So I went up there. I couldn't figure out what the heck was going on. Well, it was one of my cousins was on the ship anchored not too far from us.
Wow.
Hong Kong of all places.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.